You've been speaking life into everyone else, but when was the last time you spoke life into you? I came here today not just to inspire you, but to wake you up, because for too long you've let the voice in your head speak defeat when God's been whispering destiny. For too long you've answered to fear, insecurity, and doubt, but not anymore. I dare you for just 3 days to shift the conversation. Talk to yourself like you're already walking in purpose. Talk to yourself like you believe what God said about you, because when you change your language, you change your life. And if you'll do this with me, if you'll speak life, speak victory, speak truth for just 3 days, I promise you, everything can begin to shift. Let's talk about it. We often underestimate the power of the words we speak, especially when those words are directed at ourselves. We are careful with what we say to others. We choose kindness when we're trying not to hurt someone's feelings. We speak encouragement to lift someone's spirit, and we whisper love when someone is breaking. But when it comes to the conversations we have within the walls of our own mind, we are reckless. We speak defeat. We speak fear. We rehearse failure like it's a script we've memorized. And then we wonder why our lives feel stuck in the same cycles. The truth is, our lives move in the direction of our most dominant words. If your language is full of doubt, don't be surprised when your life starts to reflect it. If your mouth is constantly rehearsing pain, don't be shocked when your heart feels trapped in it. Every word carries weight. Every syllable plants a seed. And the harvest you're living in today might just be the result of the words you sowed yesterday. You've been saying, I'm not good enough, and your actions followed. You've been saying nothing ever works out for me, and your energy aligns with that expectation. You've been saying, I can't change, and your mind has settled into that belief. But here's the truth. What you speak, you give life to. God created the entire universe with words. He said, let there be light, and light appeared. He didn't build it with his hands. He didn't sketch it out with blueprints. He spoke it. That's the same image you were created in. That same authority sits inside you. But instead of creating light, you've been speaking darkness. Instead of building your future with faith-filled words, you've been tearing it down with careless talk. You have to understand that what you say is not neutral. There's no such thing as just venting when you're constantly speaking lack. There is no harmless self-deprecation when your spirit is absorbing every word. Your subconscious doesn't know the difference between a joke and a prophecy. When you say, I'm so stupid, it doesn't laugh, it believes you. When you say, I'll never get out of this, your body begins to respond like that's true. Your posture drops, your energy fades, your motivation disappears. You've become fluent in a language that limits you, but what if for 3 days you became fluent in faith? What if you begin to speak on purpose, with purpose? Speaking with intention means you don't just talk about what you see, you speak about what you believe. You might see struggle, but you speak strength. You might feel fear, but you declare faith. You might be walking through the valley, but you remind yourself of the mountain. This kind of speech isn't denial, it's alignment. It's putting your words in agreement with the outcome you want, not the opposition you're facing. Because if your speech always echoes your circumstances, your speech will always be reactive. But when you speak with intention, your words become prophetic. They go ahead of you. They open doors. Think about how often Jesus changed a situation by speaking. He told a storm, peace, be still. He told the man, get up and walk. He told Lazarus, come forth. Every time, words were the vehicle of transformation. And yet here we are, afraid to tell ourselves, I am enough, or I am chosen, or I am still becoming. You don't need an audience to start speaking differently. You don't need a stage. You don't need a following. You need a mirror. You need a moment. You need a made-up mind. Because when you talk to yourself with intention, your spirit begins to rise to the level of your declaration. Intentional speech doesn't wait for things to feel good. It decides to speak good anyway. It's when you're standing in the middle of the mess and you still say something good is coming from this. It's when everything says you should quit, but your mouth says I'm still going. It's when you don't feel beautiful, but you say I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. This isn't pretending, this is partnering with truth. And not the truth of your temporary feelings, but the truth of your eternal value. You want to change your life, don't just change your habits, change your language. Start with how you talk about yourself in the quiet. When nobody's listening, when it's just you and your thoughts, what are you saying? What are you feeding your future with? Your next season will be shaped by the conversations you're having now. You've got to speak like the version of you that's already free. Talk like the healed you. Talk like the confident you. Talk like the focused, intentional, elevated version of yourself. Because if you don't speak her into existence, who will? This world is full of noise trying to tell you who you are, social media, opinions, past experiences. But your power is in taking back that narrative and declaring for yourself what you will be. You are not what they said. You are not what you did. You are what you decide to believe, and what you believe is directly tied to what you say. So speak like you mean it. Speak like your life depends on it. Because it does. Speak like every word is a building block to the life God designed for you. Stop letting insecurity speak first. Stop letting fear write your script. Let faith be your language. Let love lead your tone. Let purpose set your vocabulary. You don't need to know all the answers. You don't have to feel confident every moment, but you can be intentional. You can pause before you speak. You can choose language that builds instead of breaks. You can align your words with you can practice speech that aligns with your future, not your past. This doesn't mean you'll always get it right. You'll slip, you'll fall back into old patterns. But intentional speech isn't about perfection, it's about direction. You're choosing to speak life, even when death is trying to choke your joy. You're choosing to say, I will rise, even when everything around you says, stay down. You're choosing to water your purpose with words that are rooted in truth, in identity, and in grace. Your speech becomes your strategy. Your words become your weapon. And when you begin to speak with intention, you activate something in the atmosphere. Heaven leans in, hell backs up, and your soul starts to believe that maybe, just maybe, you were never the problem. Maybe you just needed new language. Before you ever become something in the natural, you have to name it in the spirit. The way you speak to yourself is not just casual conversation, it's identity formation. Every word you use to describe yourself is laying the foundation for who you believe you are and what you believe you're capable of. Most people think identity is something we're born with or something we discover, but the truth is, identity is something we build word by word. The names you answer to, the labels you accept, the language you allow, these all shape the lens through which you see your life. If you constantly speak failure, you start to walk like a failure. If you call yourself broken, you begin to live like restoration is impossible. But if you start to call yourself chosen, worthy, whole, and becoming, you begin to rise into alignment with who God already knows you to be. You know, God has already spoken a name over you, but the question is, are you repeating it? Are you echoing heaven, or are you echoing fear? Because every time you speak, you either reinforce the truth God declared, or you reinforce the lie the enemy whispered. God called you a masterpiece, and you keep calling yourself a mess. God said you're more than a conqueror, and you keep calling yourself not enough. God said you're fearfully and wonderfully made, and you keep picking yourself apart. That disconnect between divine identity and human language is where insecurity lives. It's not that you don't have worth, it's that you haven't agreed with it. It's not that you don't have purpose, it's that you haven't spoken it. In the Bible, names were more than just titles, they were prophetic declarations. When God changed Abram's name to Abraham, he was calling him father of many nations before he had any children. When he changed Jacob's name to Israel, he was shifting him from deceiver to destiny. When Jesus looked at Simon and said, "You are Peter," he wasn't just giving him a nickname. He was speaking to the rock that Simon didn't even know was in him yet. And that's what God is doing with you. He's calling you by your future. He's naming you by your purpose. But it won't shift your life until it shifts your language. You have to start calling yourself what God has already called you. This isn't about arrogance. This is about agreement. There is a huge difference between pride and identity. Pride says, I'm doing this on my own. Identity says, I am who he says I am. And if you're going to grow, you've got to be willing to speak some things that feel too big for where you are right now. It may feel awkward at first to say, I am strong when you feel weak. It may feel strange to say, I am healed while you're still hurting. But language is not meant to describe your limitations. It's meant to declare your potential. Faith speaks what it wants to see, not just what it currently sees. So when you speak identity over yourself, you're not lying. We've spent so much time rehearsing what people said about us that we've forgotten to rehearse what God has said to us. The labels you were given, too much, not enough, broken, hard to love, those are not your name. You have to learn how to cancel every label that contradicts your calling. Stop answering to insecure when God called you beloved. Stop claiming anxious when God said you have a sound mind. Your identity is not up for negotiation, and it is not determined by your past, your pain, or your performance. It is established by your Creator, and your job is to repeat it until you believe it. Sometimes it's not even the loud voices that shape our identity, it's the quiet ones. The subtle self-talk that happens when no one's around. The whispers like, you always mess things up. Or no one would miss you if you disappeared. Or you're not doing enough, being enough, achieving enough. Those whispers have power when they go unchecked. But you can't just silence those lies. You have to replace them. Speak back to the voice that tries to limit you. Say, I am chosen. Say, I am called. Say, I am covered. Not because it's a cute affirmation, but because it's the truth. And truth has the power to unchain you. When you shift your language, you shift your belief. And when you shift your belief, you shift your behavior. That's why the enemy is so strategic in attacking your identity, because if he can convince you that you're unworthy, you won't even try to walk in your purpose. If he can convince you that you're broken, you won't bother to believe for healing. But the moment you start speaking like a daughter, like a son, like someone with destiny, you begin to move differently. You pray with confidence, you walk with clarity, you show up even when it's hard, because you're not just motivated. Words create pathways in the brain, and the more you speak identity, the more your mind begins to follow that road. It becomes easier to believe, easier to stand firm, easier to reject lies, because you've paved a new mental highway with truth. But it's not a one-time thing. Identity isn't claimed once. It's reinforced daily. You have to speak it when you wake up, when you're triggered, when you're tired, when you're tempted, especially when you don't feel it, especially when the voice in your head is trying to drag you back to the old version of yourself. And you won't always feel like speaking it, but the goal is not to feel it first. The goal is to say it until your soul catches up. Don't wait for your confidence to be fully formed. Speak like it's already in you. You don't grow into identity in silence. You grow into it with language. And sometimes it takes saying it 1,000 times before you believe it once. That's okay. Keep saying it. Keep declaring it. Keep speaking what God spoke, because identity doesn't come from effort. It comes from agreement. There is power in calling yourself by your right name. When the world says you're a mistake, God says you're my masterpiece. When your past says you'll always be this way, God says, I'm doing a new thing in you. When shame says hide, God says come forth. You have to decide whose voice will shape your vocabulary. Will it be the voice of your trauma or the voice of your truth? Will it be the voice of your failure or the voice of your Father? What you say to yourself determines what you believe about yourself, and what you believe becomes what you expect. What you expect shapes what you attract. So if you want to change what you're experiencing, start by changing what you're saying. Call yourself bold, call yourself disciplined, call yourself free, call yourself creative, focused, joyful, healed. Call yourself by the name that reflects your future, not your fear. Because the moment you begin to speak differently, you start to see differently. And when you see yourself the way God sees you, everything begins to change, even if nothing on the outside has shifted yet. We often assume transformation requires dramatic effort over long periods, but sometimes the biggest breakthroughs happen in the smallest windows, when we commit fully, intentionally, and consistently for a short stretch of time. 3 days may sound insignificant to the world, but in the spirit, 3 days can change everything. It's not about the number, it's about the focus, about what happens when you stop living on autopilot and start choosing your words, your thoughts, and your posture with purpose. Because most of the patterns that hold us back aren't rooted in deep trauma, they're rooted in repetition. We've simply said the same negative things for so long that our mind has mistaken them for truth. But when you disrupt that pattern with even a brief period of intentional speech, the shift begins. Not because everything around you instantly changes, but because you do. You stop feeding the story of your failure. You stop giving oxygen to doubt. You stop repeating the narrative that's been keeping you bound. For 3 days, you commit to a different rhythm. You tell yourself a new story. You speak to yourself like you're already free. And in that space, something powerful is activated. A new pattern begins. One rooted not in fear, but in faith. There is something sacred about small acts done consistently. It's easy to post a quote, to repeat an affirmation one time, to get inspired for a moment, but consistency is what turns inspiration into transformation. And you don't need a whole year to get started. You need 3 days of showing up fully. 3 days of catching every lie before it leaves your mouth. 3 days of replacing every I can't with I'm growing. 3 days of refusing to speak defeat over yourself, no matter how familiar it feels. That consistency may not fix everything, but it will disrupt the cycle you've been stuck in. Because most people don't stay stuck from one big event. They stay stuck because they keep rehearsing the same internal script. They get up and tell themselves the same story. I'm tired, I'm behind, I'm not enough. Day after day, those sentences shape their belief system. And that belief system becomes a barrier between them and who they're called to be. But if you give yourself 3 days to speak differently, you start to loosen that grip. You make it harder for those old stories to take hold. You're not giving them the repetition they need to survive. You're starving the lie and feeding the truth. Even Jesus used 3 days to model transformation. He went into the grave, into the darkest place, and in 3 days, everything changed. The resurrection wasn't just a miracle, it was a blueprint. It showed us that darkness doesn't get the final word when there is purpose at work. That even in hidden places, transformation is possible. You may feel buried right now, under shame, under fear, under years of internal warfare. But if you'll commit to 3 days of resurrection language, something can begin to rise in you. Hope can breathe again. Identity can emerge. Confidence can stretch its legs, all because you chose to stay consistent, to speak with intention, and to break the pattern. Patterns are not broken by accident. They're broken by awareness, decision, and discipline. Awareness says, this is the cycle I'm in. Decision says, I don't want to stay here. And discipline says, I'm willing to do something about it. That's what these 3 days are about. You're not waiting on a perfect mood. You're not waiting until you feel ready. You're deciding that for 3 days, you're going to speak like your life depends on it, because it does. You're going to choose your words like they're seeds, like they'll grow into something, like they have weight, because they do. Your words are the first tool of transformation. Before you change your behavior, your finances, your relationships, or your future, you have to change your language. You can't keep saying this is just who I am and expect anything different to show up. Who you are is fluid when your words are rooted in truth. And when you're consistent in speaking truth, even when you don't feel it, you begin to rewire the way your mind thinks, reacts, and expects. The brain doesn't change with one declaration. It changes with consistency. So 3 days of speaking life instead of lack, that's not just nice, that's necessary. This is the kind of consistency that builds trust with yourself again, because some of us don't lack motivation, we lack trust. We don't believe ourselves when we say we'll do better. We've made too many promises to ourselves and broken them. But when you stay consistent for 3 days, you start rebuilding that trust. You show yourself that you can follow through, that you can make a decision and honor it, that you can speak differently and mean it. It's not about being perfect. It's about being present enough to notice when your old patterns try to sneak back in and choosing not to let them. These 3 days are a spiritual reset. They're not just a challenge. They're an invitation to stop waiting for breakthrough and start participating in it, to stop blaming your past and start building your present, to stop rehearsing what hurt you and start declaring what's healing you. You've got more power than you think, and these 3 days are proof of it. When you shift your words, you shift your world. You create a different mental atmosphere. You speak faith into rooms that were once filled with fear. You give your inner voice a new vocabulary, one that aligns with your growth, your healing, your calling. It's not the length of time that creates change, it's the focus. These 3 days are about choosing what to magnify. Are you going to magnify the pain or the promise? Or are you going to amplify the insecurity or the identity? Whatever you speak grows. Whatever you repeat gets rooted. So choose to speak only what you want to grow. Choose to repeat only what's aligned with who you are becoming. For 3 days, cut off the language of lack. No more I can. I'm always, I never. Replace it with I'm learning, I'm rising, I'm being shaped. Watch how your spirit responds when it hears the truth on repeat. Every time you speak with intention, you are not just breaking old patterns, you are forming new ones. That's how cycles are disrupted, not with grand gestures, but with small, consistent shifts. The way you speak to yourself is either reinforcing your chains or revealing your freedom. So when you commit to 3 days of alignment, you're not just practicing positivity, you're stepping into authority. You're saying, I get to choose how I show up for me. You're saying my old language doesn't own me anymore. You're saying God's word has the final say, and I agree with it. These 3 days may feel small, but don't confuse short term with shallow. This is deep work. Speaking life for 3 days in a row is more than a mental exercise. It's a spiritual discipline. And spiritual disciplines unlock spiritual breakthroughs. You may not feel the full shift on day 1. You may still feel the weight of old thoughts on day 2. But don't stop, because day 3 might be the day something cracks open, the day a new pattern begins, the day a buried dream comes back to life. All because you were willing to speak differently, consistently, on purpose, even when it was uncomfortable, even when no one else was watching, even when your feelings didn't match your faith. So now the question isn't, can you change? It's, will you choose to? Because for 3 days, heaven is inviting you to interrupt the pattern, shift the language, and speak to yourself like the masterpiece God already designed you to be. I'm not talking about hype. I'm talking about healing. I'm not asking you to fake it. I'm calling you to faith it. Because if you dare to talk to yourself like you are loved, like you are chosen, like you are powerful, even when you don't feel it, watch what happens. Watch how your thoughts shift. Watch how your confidence builds. Watch how the same mouth that used to speak defeat becomes the instrument of your deliverance. You've got the authority. You've got the voice. Now use it. For 3 days, speak life. And I promise your life will start to speak back.